My grandson told me to look under the table at his father's wedding. It was supposed to be just another elegant, predictable wedding, with well-arranged flowers, forced smiles, and repeated promises. I was there simply as a grandmother, observing everything from a distance until my grandson, with his innocent eyes and soft voice, told me to look under the table. I never imagined that this simple gesture would be the beginning of a discovery that would completely change the course of my family and my life. Today, I carry with me lessons about trust, instinct, and courage that I never expected to face at 63 years old. I'm happy to have you here. Follow my story to the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has reached. The headache started mildly but persistently, as if something wanted to draw my attention. I walked to the office in search of a painkiller when I tripped on the rug and hit the corner of the bookshelf. The Bible that Raymond kept there, almost like an amulet, fell to the floor with a dry thud. As I picked it up, a yellowed leaf slipped between the pages, as if it wanted to be found. I read the phrase once, then again. If she discovers the truth, kill her. I froze. For a second, I didn't know if it was real or a product of the pain throbbing in my temples. My eyes scanned the paper as if they could find another hidden message, something to disprove what I saw. But the firm handwriting and the aged paper left no room for doubt. I felt a cold shiver run up my spine, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I closed the Bible carefully, as if hiding a dangerous secret. In that instant, the house seemed quieter than ever, as if even the furniture knew something had changed. I walked to the bedroom and tucked the note among my underwear, folding it 4 times. I couldn't act on impulse. Raymond couldn't realize something was wrong. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman there looked the same, but something inside me was already different. Lorraine decides to pretend she saw nothing. For now. At breakfast, Raymond's every move seemed carefully choreographed. The way he stirred sugar into his coffee, the way he stroked the back of my neck, now sounded like strategies, not gestures of affection. His eyes smiled, but I could no longer believe them. My children laughed and ran through the kitchen, oblivious to the growing tension in the air. I smiled back mechanically while everything inside me twisted. When he left for work, I rummaged through the jacket he had left hanging. My hands searched the pockets with a mix of fear and necessity. And there it was. A jewelry receipt precisely folded. The store's name was unfamiliar to me, but something told me it wasn't a gift for me. I hadn't worn new jewelry in years. I carefully opened the paper, as if it were an artifact too fragile to face the world. The receipt was dated the previous week. The item? A ring with a central diamond. My eyes burned, but I held back the tears. It was clear Raymond had something to hide. But what else was behind those Thursday absences, vague excuses, and hurried kisses? I took a deep breath. I couldn't let myself be overwhelmed. Not yet. I closed the jacket, put the receipt in my bra, and looked at the front door. Still locked. There was still time to understand everything before he realized I was starting to wake up. She finds a jewelry receipt in his jacket pocket. In the afternoon, Judith came to visit. We pretended to have a casual conversation, but I soon showed her the hidden paper. She took the receipt with narrowed eyes, muttering something about having heard that name before. When I mentioned the city, Richmond, she raised an eyebrow. That's where I work sometimes. There's a pregnant woman who keeps showing off a ring just like it. Says she's getting married soon. I felt my stomach sink. Every word seemed to push my body into a dark well. Judith tried to soften the blow, but it was too late. The pieces began to fit. The disappearances, the empty smiles, the Thursdays on business trips. My heart beat like a trap drum in my chest. How could he hide an entire life from me? I walked back inside with heavy steps, carrying the weight of betrayal on my shoulders. Evelyn. That was the name Judith had casually mentioned. Pregnant woman with a ring. Did she know about me? Or was Raymond lying to both of us? The silence in the room seemed complicit. I sat on the sofa, my hands clutching the crumpled note. What if the note wasn't just a threat from the past? What if it was still in effect? It was time to choose. Run or discover. And I was never good at running. On Thursdays, he says he's traveling for work. I arrived in Richmond before lunch, my heart pounding in my ears. Disguised under a scarf and dark glasses, I stopped in front of the small school. Evelyn was there, exactly as Judith had described. Smiling, pregnant, and seemingly happy. She was talking to another teacher about Raymond's arrival the next day. As always on Thursdays, she said, with a sparkle in her eyes. I felt my legs weaken. So it was true. He came here every week, sustaining a lie with legs and a belly. Evelyn raised her hand to show something, a ring. My eyes widened as I recognized the design. Just like mine. The same model Raymond gave me on our 5th wedding anniversary. I returned to the car before they saw me. My chest heaved, trying to understand where the pain ended and the anger began. Evelyn seemed too good, too kind. Could it be that she was also being deceived? Or was it all part of the plan? What else was Raymond hiding between Richmond and our home? I needed answers, not just suppositions. I drove away, but I wrote down the address. The facade, the name of the school, everything. Evelyn now had a face. And my husband, 2 worlds. Evelyn holds a ring just like hers. Back home I found Raymond watching TV, as if nothing had happened. I sat beside him, his smell disgusting me for the first time. I smiled, talked about the children, commented on Judith, and every sentence sounded like a lie that needed to be told. At night, I lay with him as always, but something inside me screamed. Sleeping next to someone who planned to run away with another was unbearable. Or perhaps it wasn't just escape. The note echoed in my mind. If she discovers. Discover what exactly? The betrayal? The theft? Or something even worse? I tossed and turned in bed, waiting for sleep to save me. But it didn't come. My eyes stared at the ceiling as if expecting an answer written there. The house seemed colder. Raymond's every step sounded like a threat. I woke before the sun with a firm decision. I needed proof. As much as I could gather. Only then would I have a chance for myself and my children. It was no longer just about pain. It was survival. She decides to look for more clues. I started with the obvious places. Drawers, closets, shoe rack. Nothing. But upon opening the toolbox in the garage, I felt something strange. Among screwdrivers and screws, there was a small black box, hidden under an old cloth. Inside, a silver key with an inscription. Bank 12 Locker 78. My heart raced. It wasn't just any key. That was a safe deposit box. I grabbed an old notebook and wrote everything down: date, location, the key number. I hid the notebook inside a fabric bag. The same one where I kept threads and needles. It needed to stay out of Raymond's sight. The mystery grew, but now I had something concrete in hand. A real clue. A path to follow. I spent the rest of the day pretending a normal routine. Lacey asked me for help with her new doll. Derek watched me in silence. He always knew when something was wrong. When Raymond arrived, I faked a kiss, a smile, a dinner. But my mind was elsewhere. Inside that safe deposit box where the secrets rested. The key weighed more than any proof. It was real. And it could lead me directly to the truth. If it's a safe, what else is he hiding there? Nervousness made my hands sweat. But Judith covered for me with the naturalness of someone who had been keeping secrets for a while. We used the excuse of a bank appointment to enter the agency. With the key in hand, I went to the basement, where the safe deposit boxes silently stacked up. Number 78 appeared before me like a sentence. When I turned the key, the world stopped. Inside, there were 2 tickets to Buenos Aires marked for 3 weeks from then. A wad of cash, organized by denomination, occupied almost half the space. But what chilled me most were the documents. 2 fake IDs, one with Raymond's name, the other with the name of Ethan Blake. Another name. Another life. Another plan. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in a white handkerchief, were several letters delicately folded, as if they were treasures. All addressed to Evelyn. I started reading one of them right there, my trembling fingers touching the perfumed paper. The words spoke of a secret love, a promised future, a freedom about to happen. Each phrase was a sharp blow to my throat. I felt tears sting, but refused to let them fall there. I had proof. I had names. I had dates. But what to do with all this? She also finds love letters for Evelyn. Judith waited for me in the car, attentive. When I showed her the documents, her eyes widened. "This is big, Lorraine." And it was. Amidst the letters, a typed sheet caught my attention. A new version of the note. If she discovers. But now printed without handwriting, with a bank stamp in the bottom corner. It was official. And much more recent. The words danced before me, and for the first time, I felt the true weight of what Raymond was capable of. It was no longer just about betrayal, it was about escape, fraud, and perhaps something much worse. The man I had slept with for years was involved in something far more dangerous. And if I didn't get ahead of him, there might not be time left. My body reacted like a cornered animal. Alert, tense, instinctive. Judith spoke, but I barely heard. A plan began to form in my mind, like crochet being woven stitch by stitch. I would have to be cold, precise, invisible. I couldn't make a mistake. Raymond still didn't know that I knew. And that was the only advantage I had left. I took a deep breath, put everything back in my bag, and closed the car door with a firmness I didn't know I possessed. A plan forms, but she needs to act coldly. That night, I waited for everyone to sleep. I closed the bedroom door, took out my old camera, and started working. I photographed every document, every ticket, every letter. Double copies. Then, with steady hands, I put together a dossier. Page by page, I organized evidence, wrote down dates, summarized connections. It was a puzzle, and now I saw the outline of the figure Raymond was trying to hide. I grabbed empty folders and created divisions. Money, documents, correspondence. I even used sewing thread to secure some papers. Everything had to seem mundane, hidden in plain sight. My heart pounded, but my focus was greater than my fear. I thought of Derek and Lacey. I thought of myself. I couldn't allow that story to end as the note suggested. I stored the material inside an old sewing box, under balls of yarn and fabric scraps. Then I hid the box in the false ceiling of the bookshelf, where Raymond never looked. The dossier was now my greatest weapon, and my greatest risk. If it fell into the wrong hands, I would be lost. But if it remained with me, perhaps I would have a chance at justice. The next step has to be invisible. I told Judith the truth the next day. Not everything, but enough for her to understand the magnitude of the storm. It was she who suggested we open a bank account solely in my name. We chose a small bank far from Raymond's branch. Each day I transferred small amounts from our joint money. Almost imperceptible. Almost invisible. Over time I managed to gather a minimum reserve, enough for an emergency plan. In a simple envelope I addressed a name Judith gave me. Inspector Samuel Green. A just man according to her. An old colleague of her father. Inside, I put some of the dossier copies with an anonymous note. I couldn't risk being discovered. The plan was simple. Get the information into the right hands without leaving a trace. Judith kept absolute secrecy. She knew what was at stake. Not just my life, but that of 2 innocent children. I felt like I was on a chessboard where every move required cold blood. An envelope with a destination. Inspector Green. It was then that the perfect opportunity arose. An old client who owned a store in the capital stopped by to pick up an order. Every week she traveled carrying large bags. On a calculated impulse, I hid the envelope inside the lining of her bag, along with the anonymous note. I asked her to deliver it to the police, as if it were a favor for a distant friend. She smiled, unsuspecting. She thanked me for the quick delivery, and left with the elegance of someone not carrying a mortal secret in her bag. When the door closed, I knelt on the floor and prayed as I hadn't in years. For truth. For justice. For survival. This could not fail. This was all I had. Every minute that passed after her departure was an eternity. I felt the weight of the decision on my back, but also a spark of relief. I had done my part. Now it was to hope that fate would help me. And that Green was indeed who Judith said he was. The client leaves unsuspecting. Lorraine prays. That evening Raymond arrived early. His face seemed heavy, as if something was bothering him. We had dinner in silence. The children noticed but didn't comment. When I took the plates to the sink, he approached from behind. "Did you go through my things?" he asked, his voice low and firm. Inside I froze. Outside I smiled. "Of course not, love," I replied, turning with the dish towel in my hand. His gaze lingered on my face for a second longer than usual, as if searching for cracks. He found none. I had become an actress in my own life. A survivor disguised as an ordinary wife. As he went upstairs, I realized the game was getting tighter. But I still had a card hidden. And that bought me time. "Did you go through my things?" Lorraine smiles. "Of course not, love. Before going to sleep, I went to the bookshelf and touched the hidden box as if it were an amulet. I thought of Evelyn, still not knowing if she was a victim or an accomplice. I thought of Patrick, the bank manager whom Judith distrusted. And of Green, who might already have the envelope in hand. A web was forming before me. It was then that I heard Raymond on the phone, in the next room. He spoke softly, but I managed to catch 3 words. 6 days. Everything ready. My heart raced. The day of the robbery. The outcome. The point of no return. Now I knew. It wasn't just betrayal. It was crime. It was escape. And perhaps if I failed, it would be the end. I turned off the bedroom light and hugged Lacey, who was sleeping beside me. Her scent, her warm skin, reminded me of the reason for all of this. I needed to continue. For them. For me. For all the others who never had this chance. The day of the robbery is set for 6 days from now. I woke up startled by the sound of sirens ripping through the sky. Helicopters crossed the air like birds on alert, and the street was filled with police cars. I opened the curtain and saw neighbors coming out with cell phones in hand, recording everything. Judith appeared at the door out of breath. "Did you see this?" We ran to the living room, turned on the television. The image was clear and cruel. Raymond, handcuffed, being put into the paddy wagon next to Patrick Voss. The world spun slowly as I tried to absorb the scene. They were arrested. The operation was bigger than I imagined. I saw the bank's name emblazoned on the screen. I saw familiar faces from the city being dragged away. My stomach churned. Not for them, but for the exposure. For the shame that preceded any feeling of justice. The news spread like wildfire. Reporters spoke of fraud, money laundering, attempted escape. I saw Raymond's car being searched. I saw the papers, the bags, the tickets. Every piece of evidence I had gathered was now in the hands of justice. But with them also came my name, even if no one knew it. I was the shadow behind the scandal. The whole city knows. Shame comes before relief. Derek appeared on the stairs, still in his pajamas, his eyes sleepy. Lacey played on the rug, oblivious to the storm. I took them both to the kitchen, trying to maintain a routine. I made coffee with milk, cut the bread in half, and smiled as best I could. "Your father is going on a long trip," I said, as if narrating a distant tale. But Derek already knew. He returned to the living room in silence, and I followed him with a heavy heart. The TV showed images of the bank being sealed. When he saw Raymond handcuffed, he said nothing. He just looked at me with eyes full of questions. Took me a while to react. I knelt beside him, touched his face. He finally spoke in an almost unrecognizable whisper. "Why is Daddy in jail, Mom?" I took a deep breath, swallowed the lump in my throat. "Because he did wrong things, son. And sometimes the people we love also make mistakes." He nodded in silence but didn't hug me. I stayed there, my hand on his knee, feeling the abyss between us. I was protecting him, but also breaking a part of his childhood that would never return. "Why is Daddy in jail, Mom?" By late afternoon, the news had spread even further. Besides Raymond and Patrick, other employees were being investigated. And then Evelyn appeared on screen. Pregnant, alone, leaving home with a small backpack. Reporters followed her for a few blocks. She said nothing. She just got into a taxi and disappeared. The caption: "The accountant's pregnant fiancé." I felt a knot in my stomach. I expected anger. But what came was a wave of silent empathy. She too had been deceived. She too was alone now. Judith appeared with a bowl of soup and tried to talk, but my mind was far away. There was an unspoken question. Would I remain alone or would I approach this woman? She was part of the same disaster. Perhaps in some way she could also be part of the reconstruction. But before that, I needed to take care of us. And it would all begin with a notice left at my door the next day. A letter from the city hall, with stamps, seals, and deadlines. The house, registered in Raymond's name, would go up for judicial auction. In just 15 days. My home would be another piece removed from the board. The house will be auctioned in 15 days. There was no time for lamentations. With Judith's help, I packed the essentials. Clothes, documents, the children's notebooks, and my sewing box. A small truck took us to the Capitol, where Louise, my childhood friend, welcomed us without asking any questions. The apartment was small, but there was warmth in her eyes. and security. For the first time in days I could breathe without fear. The children settled into one of the bedrooms. Louise shared hers with me. The mattress on the floor was firmer than any promise Raymond had made to me. I looked around and saw old furniture, crooked paintings, but I also saw hope. It was the beginning of something. Evelyn had disappeared from the news. No one knew her whereabouts. But something inside me said, she will appear. And I will be ready. The feeling of loss still lingered in my steps. But now there was something different. A spark of strength growing in the silence. Louise lent me her sewing machine, old but sturdy. I started sewing buttons, adjusting hems, mending zippers. It was little, but it was mine. Evelyn disappears from the news. But Lorraine feels she will appear. On the small balcony of the building, Lacey watched me with attentive eyes. Are you going to make dresses, Mom? I smiled. I need thread and courage, I replied, making the first stitch on a floral fabric. At first I sewed for neighbors, small repairs, exchanges for groceries. Gradually I began to dream of more. A studio? No. It was still too early. But it wasn't impossible. I walked the streets with a bag of fabrics and a folder of patterns. I visited haberdasheries, asked about orders. Most told me no. But one yes was enough. And it came. A children's clothing store ordered 10 test pieces. My fingers ached, but my soul lit up. It was a chance. Perhaps a new beginning. I spent nights sewing in silence. Lacey slept beside me, and Derek reviewed prices with Louise's old calculator. The fabric warmed my hands, as if it had a life of its own. For the first time I didn't think of Raymond. I thought of myself, and what I could create from the shattered pieces. A big order comes in, perhaps a new beginning. Derek, always so quiet, began to ask questions about the house, about money, about the future. I sat with him at the table, showed him simple account books. I taught him how to record expenses, calculate profits, plan. His eyes sparkled. He understood. He wanted to participate. It was as if, by sharing the pain, I was multiplying strength. Every cent was a conquest. Every piece sold a small victory. Louise celebrated with me like a sister. The clothes began to attract the attention of other stores. But more important than anything was realizing, my children were growing strong even amidst the fall. Derek surprised me. Lacey drew dresses with colored pencils. The family Raymond tried to destroy now flourished in a new way. Without luxury. Without lies. But with truth. And with affection. Lorraine feels her children are her greatest wealth. That night the sky was clearer. I opened the window, let the wind in. The city was noisy, but inside that small apartment peace reigned. I was organizing fabrics when I heard a knock at the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Louise ran from the room worried. The children were in the living room. I went to answer it. I opened it slowly, my heart pounding. Before me, a woman with swollen eyes and hair hastily tied back. In her arms a baby slept. Evelyn. I have nowhere to go, she said, her voice trembling. And I didn't know about you. I remained silent. The baby breathed deeply, oblivious to the chaos that had brought him there. Behind me Lacey appeared. She saw the baby. Then she looked at Evelyn. And as if she knew something even I didn't understand, she smiled. Everything inside me mixed. Anger, fear, compassion. But I didn't close the door. I simply took a deep breath and stepped back. Someone knocks at the door, with a baby in her arms. The sound of the knock on the door still echoed when I opened it and saw Evelyn standing there, her eyes swollen and a sleeping baby in her arms. The image froze me. She was no longer a threat, but a woman as wounded as I was. I have nowhere to go. And I didn't know about you, she whispered, as if asking permission to exist. For an instant I wished to close the door. It would be easier, safer. But her gaze held a pain I recognized by heart. We stood in silence, facing each other, while the baby breathed deeply, oblivious to the weight of those words. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stood there, waiting. I felt my hand tremble, clutching the doorknob, and looked back inside the house. My children were in the bedroom. My shattered life was beginning to mend. Was there room for another wound there? It was Lacey who decided. She appeared behind me, holding a pencil and a drawing, and looked at Evelyn as if she already knew who she was. With small steps, She hugged Evelyn's leg with the naturalness of someone who recognizes kindness. Evelyn smiled, surprised. My heart wavered. If my daughter could see something good in that woman, perhaps I could too. I took a step back. Enough for her to enter. Evelyn crossed the threshold cautiously, as if treading on sacred ground. It was the beginning of something I would never have imagined. A coexistence forced by fate, but softened by the motherhood we shared. Lacey hugs her, as if she senses something good. Sharing space was the first challenge. 2 mattresses on the floor, a shared sink, alternating bath times for the baby. But over time our routine became harmony. Evelyn cleaned, cooked, and more than that, knew how to organize. I realized this when one night, she set up a spreadsheet to control the sewing orders. In a few weeks, what was improvisation became a system. And the system worked. Our small atelier began to gain momentum. Evelyn handled numbers well, and had a keen eye for adjusting deadlines. I took care of production, she took care of delivery. I began to trust, first with tasks, then with her. Evelyn was practical, quiet, and had a sweet affection for her son. That baby united the environments with his toothless smiles and gentle cries. We spoke little about the past, but it was impossible to ignore what connected us. The same man, the same lie, the same pain. Still, neither of us seemed willing to relive the details. Our agreement was unspoken. Look forward. Louise, who always observed everything carefully, called me aside. This could end badly, she said bluntly. You don't really know her. I nodded, but without truly agreeing. Evelyn was much more a victim than an accomplice. And above all, she was trying to start over. Like me. Like so many others. We slept side by side, with the babies in the middle, and sewed as if rebuilding a soul. Louise warns. This could end badly. Word of mouth spread faster than we imagined. Neighbors began knocking on our door with daily requests. In a short time we were working day and night. The children helped as much as they could. Lacey separated threads by color. Derek folded fabrics with precision. Evelyn called me into the kitchen one night, with a notebook in her hands and a shy smile on her lips. I think we need a name. I was surprised. I never thought of naming it. To me it was just survival with a needle and thread. L&L, she suggested. For Lorraine and Lacey. Or Lorraine and Louise. Or Lorraine and Evelyn. I smiled for the first time in weeks. It was the first time that house echoed something close to lightness. A name. A beginning. We created a simple label with black thread. Evelyn sewed it by hand on the first pieces. L&L began to identify dresses, skirts, blouses. Customers praised them. Some started asking for custom-made items. It was as if suddenly our scraps gained value. Louise, even cautious, recognized that something good was being born there. And then an unexpected letter arrived, formally folded and with an elegant sender. An official invitation to exhibit at the local fashion festival. A serious event with booths and a runway. I read and reread it 3 times before I believed it. Our work would be seen by real people. We received an invitation to exhibit at the local fashion festival. The morning of the festival arrived with the scent of strong coffee and nervousness. I woke before the sun, prepared the children, and carefully arranged each piece with almost sacred care. Evelyn tied her hair, put on a white blouse, and adjusted the baby in the stroller. As our creations paraded down the makeshift runway, I felt my chest swell with a pride I hadn't experienced in a long time. The audience applauded, but everything around me seemed silent. I saw each stitch as if it were my own scar. Each knot a new beginning. Evelyn sat beside me. She cried discreetly, hugging the baby tightly. You saved my life, she whispered, and this time, it was I who couldn't hold back the tears. This was more than fashion. It was redemption. A lady in a blue dress approached after the presentation. Her hair was tied back, her eyes attentive. Do you sell retail? She asked with genuine interest. I want to resell. Your work has soul. We exchanged cards. Evelyn, with her practical demeanor, was already talking about deadlines and quantities. I just watched, trying to process everything. We were indeed being seen. A lady approaches. She wants to resell the pieces. The following week, we closed a deal with the Elegant Ladies store. The order was large. We rented a small spot in the city center. An old space but with a storefront. We pinned the first pieces with golden pins. I hung the invoice from the first payment on the wall, inside a simple frame. It was our birth certificate as a brand, and as women who refused to be destroyed. We named the space L&L as Dreamed. The name soon gained traction among merchants and customers. Evelyn organized deliveries. I took care of the sewing. Louise helped with the finishing touches. Derek proudly designed the new logo. 2 crossed needles forming a heart. I hung his drawing at the store's entrance, like someone nailing hope to the door frame. Lacey began to design children's dresses with playful details. We started sewing some, and the neighborhood mothers loved them. The small was transforming into solid, and what was survival now had a name, address, and storefront. Every day, our story was also sewn onto the faces of customers. And in the mirror I began to recognize myself. Derek draws the store's new logo. One afternoon, the mailman left a beige envelope with no return address. The letters of my name were written with a thin blue pen without haste. I opened it calmly. Inside just a note. You did well. Essie. I smiled without needing to think. I knew exactly who it was. Inspector Samuel Green. The man who received my dossier. The man who brought Raymond to justice. That note now was the silent answer I needed. I put the paper between the pages of the same Bible that months ago had revealed my hell. The old note was still there, folded. Now the two lived side by side. One a symbol of where I came from, the other of where I arrived. Evelyn saw but didn't ask. She just offered me a cup of tea and a serene smile. Between us, silence was understanding. The store was doing well. Life was gaining rhythm. But a restlessness stayed with me. Like a zipper that doesn't close completely. Something was missing. Someone. Patrick. The man from the note. The face behind the sentence that almost destroyed me. But one piece was still missing, Patrick. It was on a cloudy late afternoon that he appeared. Patrick Voss entered the store with heavy steps and downcast eyes, as if guilt weighed more than his body. He was different, aged smaller. Evelyn recognized him first. She stiffened instantly. What do you want here? She said firmly. He took off his hat and spoke softly, without looking at either of us. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say that the note was my idea. For a few seconds time stopped. My body didn't react but my mind screamed. That was what I feared most to hear and at the same time what I needed most. The man responsible for signing my sentence now there before me admitting what he had done. Evelyn took 2 steps, her finger already pointing to the phone. I'm calling the police right now. I didn't come to run or to deny anything. He continued, slowly raising his hands. I just needed to look into your eyes and tell you the truth. The baby in the corner of the store whined, as if sensing the tension. Evelyn didn't back down, and I inside trembled. It was like reliving the day of the note, only with the author breathing the same air as me. My hand gripped the counter trying to understand if this was justice or another trap. But something about Patrick seemed genuine. There was no arrogance, only remorse. And I needed to listen. Evelyn wants to call the police. I asked Evelyn to wait. I made a gesture with my hand, asking for silence. Patrick took a deep breath, pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, and placed it on the counter. It doesn't make up for what I did, but it's all I could gather. The amount we embezzled. Half has already been confiscated. But this part is my responsibility. I opened the envelope and saw the check. The same number the press had reported. Why now? I asked, still suspicious. He finally looked at me. Because you survived. Because you turned something rotten into something beautiful. And because, if I die tomorrow, I want to have done at least one good thing. His sincerity disarmed me. Evelyn remained rigid. I inside was breaking apart and rebuilding myself at the same time. It was the climax of my story. From the note to the counter. From fear to power. I was standing before the man who tried to erase me, and now he was asking to make amends. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because he needed someone to allow him to do the right thing even if late. I sighed. I thought of the women in the shelter. I thought of those who still hadn't escaped the invisible prison I had been in. I forgive you. But on one condition, I said firmly. This money will serve those who didn't have the chances I had. It will serve life. Lorraine forgives him with conditions. In the following days, Evelyn and I sought out the city's women's shelter. A quiet, hidden place full of frightened eyes and fragile hopes. We donated the amount in the name of the L&L store, but also in the name of reparation. The shelter director cried upon receiving it. "You have no idea what this means," she said, squeezing my hand tightly. And perhaps it was true. Perhaps we just felt it without needing to understand. The story gained space in local newspapers. L&L store donates full amount of bank fraud to women's shelter. Social media reacted. We gained customers, but more than that, we gained respect. Neighbors hugged us in the street. The store became a place of refuge, sharing stories, sewing bonds. The gesture didn't erase the past, but it illuminated the path ahead. Lacey hung a new drawing in the storefront. A woman in a floral dress, holding a thread that crossed several other figures. It was simple. It was strong. Evelyn suggested it become the new logo. I agreed. We were sewing more than clothes. We were sewing lives, truths, and futures. But one question persisted without a complete answer. And what about Raymond? And what about Raymond? The news arrived by letter. Raymond would be released from prison on parole. The conditions were clear. He could not approach me or the children without judicial authorization. But even so, he tried to make contact. First with a letter to the store's address. Then with messages through acquaintances. Evelyn was direct. "He won't get near my son." And I hesitated. For a moment I thought of denying everything. But then I decided to allow supervised visits. Derek overheard the conversation at dinner. He remained silent for long minutes. Then he pushed his plate away and said, "I don't want to go." I didn't argue. I didn't insist. "He's not ready," I whispered to Evelyn later. And I was right. Derek carried deep-seated pains where not even time could reach. Lacey, on the other hand, asked to go. "I want to show him my drawing," she said naturally. On the appointed day, we went to the community center. The room was white, cold, silent. Raymond entered in simple clothes and a thin beard. Aged. Thinner. His eyes seemed to search for something, but without certainty if he would still find it. When he saw Lacey, he forced a smile. She walked to him with slow steps, without fear but without affection. She extended the colorful paper she had prepared. It was a drawing of a woman with a cape, surrounded by smiling children. "This is my mom," she said firmly. Raymond was speechless. He touched the drawing but couldn't look Lacey in the eye. Time passed slowly. When it was over, she just said, "Goodbye, Daddy," and came back to me. "He's not ready." Raymond tried to prolong the visit, but the rules were clear. 10 minutes and nothing more. Before leaving, he looked at me for the first time. He was searching for something on my face, perhaps remorse, perhaps longing. But he found nothing. I was there whole. Sewn, yes. With scars, of course. But standing. And free. He said nothing. He just lowered his head and left through the door. On the way back, Lacey held my hand. "He looks sad," she said. I agreed. But I didn't explain. Raymond's sadness was not my responsibility. I had carried enough for too long. Now it was a time for lightness. A time for rebuilding. And he was part of the past. Not the future. Upon arriving home, I made tea and sat by the window. I watched the car that took Raymond turn the corner, getting smaller and smaller, until it disappeared. I felt a lightness in my chest. No anger. No longing. Just a clean emptiness, like the end of a chapter. "You had everything. And you lost everything," I whispered. It was true. But I gained myself. But I gained myself. Now, I'm curious about you who heard my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you been through something similar? Support the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. I'm leaving another story on the end screen that you'll also like, and it will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.